Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much again for coming and joining us at the 10th Global Partners Summit. And we're, as everybody said, delighted to be here at Columbia University today. I'm Ester Fuchs. I'll be moderating the morning panels. And I'm sure everybody was appreciative of the conversation that Jeff Immelt and Mayor Bloomberg had this morning. It made me feel a little bit more optimistic, not just about the future of cities, but the capacity of government, particularly at the city level, to problem solve. We in New York City, I think, are very lucky to have Mayor Bloomberg at the helm during this economic recession, and I know that most of us in the city at least understand that most of the time. During this really difficult period in the world's economy, there is nothing more important than creating jobs in our cities. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you today some of the most creative city policymakers from around the globe who are working with business to create jobs. And they will focus on the 21st century innovation economy. And if you don't know what that is, you're about to find out. Our first speaker will be Seth Pinsky, who was appointed to become president of the New York City Economic Development Corporation by Mayor Michael Bloomberg in February of 2008. Prior to joining the New York City EDC, Seth was an associate at the law firm of Cleary Gottlieb in the real estate practice and a financial analyst at the mergers and acquisitions firm of James Wolfson. Seth has a graduate degree from Harvard Law School, but we also claim him here at Columbia since he's got his BA and he majored in ancient history, which I'm sure has served you well, Seth, at Columbia College. Seth has been the driving force behind diversifying New York City's economy, making us a leader in the 21st century innovation economy. And I have to say, it's my personal pleasure to introduce Seth Pinsky to everyone here today. He is amazing.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you very much. And I also wanted to thank New York City Global Partners and Marjorie Tiven, as well as GE and the World Bank, and of course, Columbia. It's always great to be back here. I wanted to talk a little bit about where New York is and what our strategy is for maintaining the competitive position of New York in the world economy. And I wanted to start first by just making an observation, which is that for much of the last century, New York was really in a very privileged position, given that it was the unquestioned business capital of the unquestioned economic superpower of the world. And though we had to work hard to attain that position, in many ways, it placed a certain floor on our competitive position worldwide. In the 21st century, though, as other economies around the world are growing faster than the United States, and though the United States remains an indispensable country economically, militarily, and otherwise, it's clear that America's position will no longer be as dominant as it has been, and therefore that New York really needs to do more than it has in the past in order to maintain its position in the global economy. And when we look around the world and we talk to academics and we talk to business leaders and others and we ask, well, what is it that New York needs to do in order to continue to play the role that it has played traditionally? What we hear over and over from people is that New York really must be a leader in innovation. And by innovation, what we mean is dominance in technology and technological innovation. It means that our private sector has to be employing business models that are one step ahead of their competitors. And it means that we have to be a leader in what are referred to sometimes as the creative fields, whether it's the arts or fashion, media, and others. And the question that we've asked ourselves as we've started to think about what our role is in the innovation economy is New York in a good position if this is truly the critical ingredient? And I think that up until recently, if we were honest with ourselves, we would have to say probably not. I think a lot of people think of New York as a capital of finance, a capital of media, capital of business more generally, but a capital of innovation that hasn't really been something in the last few decades that would have characterized New York City to many. The good news is that in the last few years, this has started to change. For example, in just the last decade, we've seen the number of patents issued to New York City-based inventors increase by 50%. Employment in high tech in New York City has grown just since 2005 by 30%. And today, over 100,000 people are employed in the high tech sector here in New York. And in 2009, for the first time, New York surpassed Massachusetts to become the #2 recipient of venture capital in technology businesses. And in 2011, in fact, we surpassed Massachusetts as the #2 recipient of venture capital overall. So all good signs and things that we're very proud of. But we know that we can't rest on our laurels. And the reason for this is that the world is a very competitive place. And anyone who doesn't continue to look at the future is going to see other cities catch up to them. And so in order for us to try to be more effective in competing, we've adopted a two-part strategy. The first part of our two-part strategy is investing in infrastructure, which the mayor talked a little bit about. And when we think about infrastructure, we think about it quite broadly. There's, of course, the basic infrastructure that a lot of people think of when they think about government investments in infrastructure, things like pipes and wires and bricks and mortars. And all of that is very important, and we're heavily involved in that. But there's also our private sector infrastructure, our office space, our housing, the things that are critical to the functioning of our city. And then on top of that, and the mayor alluded to this as well, we also think of infrastructure as our amenities, our quality of life assets, like our cultural institutions, our parks, our schools, because we know that if we're going to attract 21st century businesses, we have to have a 21st century workforce. And if we're going to attract a 21st century workforce in a very competitive world, we have to ensure that that workforce wants to be here, and the things that attract those types of people, the best and the brightest, are these kinds of amenities. And that's why even in the face of one of our most difficult fiscal environments in many, many years, we're continuing to spend at near record rates, roughly $30 billion over the next 5 years, which is about 20% higher than the 5-year capital budget that was in place before Mayor Bloomberg came into office. But investment in infrastructure is only half of the strategy. And the reason for that is that we feel that to be the capital of innovation, we also have to change our underlying business model. And by changing our underlying business model, what we mean is 3 things. First of all, we need to help our legacy industries, industries like finance and media and fashion, industries in which New York has traditionally been dominant, to transition from 20th century business models to 21st century business models. And a great example of how we're working to do that is a partnership that we actually have with Columbia and NYU Poly to develop the first municipally sponsored media lab in the country. This media lab, which is only about a year old now, has 200 members, and its goals are to do 2 things. One is to make sure that the businesses in New York know the research and development that's taking place in our world-leading research universities, but also to help them to start to predict what the trends are in the industry so that they're not caught flat-footed like a lot of New York-based businesses were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when the economy and technology started to change very rapidly around them. The second part of changing the underlying business model is working to attract industries in which we have competitive advantages here in New York, but for one reason or another, we've simply hit below our weight traditionally. And a great example of that is bioscience. In bioscience in New York City, we do a great job with major corporate headquarters. Pfizer is based here, Bristol-Myers Squibb, Forest Laboratories, other large companies. And we also do very well in basic research and development. We're the #2 recipient of National Institutes of Health funding in the country on a regular basis. But what we haven't done a great job at doing is keeping startup businesses here in New York City. And so we're now working with the private sector and partners in the state and other places to develop about 2 million square feet of new commercial wet lab space. The first, for example, 300,000 square feet of a new complex that we're building just north of Bellevue Hospital here in Manhattan opened about a year ago, and it's already full. And we're hoping to build another 400,000 square feet shortly. The third piece of our strategy for changing the underlying business model of the city, though, is not industry specific. It's, in fact, agnostic as to industry. And what that involves is promoting entrepreneurialism. And the reason why we have a piece of our strategy that's agnostic as to industry is because we believe that governments historically have not done a great job picking winners and losers. Most of the time when governments think that they're chasing the next big thing, what they're really chasing is the last big thing. And we don't want to make that mistake. We think that the way to ensure that the next big thing happens here in New York City is by putting the tools for finding that next big thing into the hands of our most important resource here in the city. That's our smart and talented workforce. And so, for example, we've put together training programs that thousands of people have come through, teaching them how to start a new business or how to navigate difficult economic times. We've had thousands of people go through them, and we intend to have thousands more go through them. We've started a network of business incubators, which the mayor alluded to. We have 9 incubators today, and we're hoping to open a couple of more in the coming months, with room for 1,000 businesses in just the next 3 years. And we've also developed a new capital fund that we've developed with partners in the private sector, where the city has put in $3 million and the private sector has matched it with about $19 million to invest in startup businesses here in New York City to help them at the early stages of their development. But even with all of this, we know that we have to do more. And the reason why we know we have to do more is not because we believe we have to do more, it's because that's what we've heard from people that we speak to. And in fact, the initiative that the mayor talked about to try to either expand an existing science and technology university here in the city or attract a new campus to New York City came from discussions that we had as part of an exercise that we called our Game Changers exercise. And what we heard over and over from people that we spoke to was that notwithstanding the excellent universities that we have, and we have some of the best universities in the world here, given the size of our economy, our metropolitan area has an economy that's roughly the size of India's. And given the size, the scope of our ambition is to be the #1 center of innovation in the 21st century globally. We just don't have enough basic research and development, and we're not producing enough engineering talent here. And so we launched this challenge to the university sector, and we asked them to propose how they would expand their presence here in New York and how they would grow our city's economy. And the responses that we heard were really phenomenal. As the mayor said, 7 proposals from 17 different institutions, some proposing up to 2 million square feet of new development, $2.5 billion in investment. And we believe that over the next 30 years, this will produce billions of dollars in new economic activity, hundreds of new businesses, and tens of thousands of new jobs. And for us, we think that this is really what I like to describe as an Erie Canal moment for New York. The Erie Canal in the 1820s was a connection from the Great Lakes down to New York Harbor that allowed the Midwestern products to come through New York rather than through competitor cities on the East Coast. And because of the investment that the state of New York made at the time in that piece of infrastructure, we locked in our competitive place, not just in the national economy, but in the international economy for decades to come. And similarly, with this investment that we now are facing in the university sector, if we can make this investment wisely, I believe that we can lock in a competitive advantage for ourselves for decades and hopefully years beyond that to come. And so our strategy is an ambitious one, it's a challenging one, but we know that it's one because of the natural advantages that New York has and because we're working so closely with our private sector, with public sector partners, and within our academic sector, we believe it's one that can succeed. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce to you now Ana Molero Roman, who is the Managing Director of Barcelona Activa, Barcelona City Council's local development agency that promotes quality and future-oriented employment and business development. Anna studied economics at Pompeu Fabra University of Barcelona. She holds an MSc in European Political Economy from the London School of Economics and a DES in Études Européennes. I did take about 4 or 10 years of French somewhere along the lines. It's an American school system. Université Catholique et Louvain and Études Politiques of Paris. Barcelona Activa has been a very important model for other cities around the globe, and Anna has been very instrumental in exporting this model and helping other cities figure out how to at least try and replicate the amazing work she's accomplished in Barcelona. This is Anna's second presentation at Global Partners Summit, and we are really delighted that she's here with us today. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Esther. First of all, on behalf of the Mayor of Barcelona, Mayor Trias, I would like to thank the City of New York, especially its mayor, to invite a delegation of Barcelona, especially after July this year, when there was a new government in the city of Barcelona after 32 years. And so it's a pleasure to be here to explain the strategy, the new strategy of the new mayor of the city of Barcelona. I also want to thank, of course, New York City Global Partners, Columbia University, General Electric, and the World Bank for making this possible. As Esther said 2.5 years ago, I was here in the same very, very nice room, and we were talking about job creation and workforce development. And it was at the beginning of the economic crisis. Barcelona had an unemployment rate of 16%, and an entrepreneurship rate of nearly 7%, and it was transforming its whole industrial economy into a more emerging and diversified economy. So from that point, 2.5 years ago, to the point where we are now, Barcelona has had the opportunity to bring and to build some competitive assets. But not everything has been good. We've also had a continuation of the crisis. We are part of the membership of the Fuchs, as you know, being part of Spain, but at the same time we have built some competitive assets. The knowledge-intensive works and companies have increased in the city of Barcelona since the crisis, so we think that it's a good sign. We have lost the jobs on those services and those sectors where we were not that competitive, but we are focusing on those jobs where we are more competitive. 30% of the companies and 50% of the workers are in the knowledge sectors now in the city of Barcelona. Industry jobs are also increasing since last year, gaining competitiveness. At the same time, we are also a tourism destination. More than 14 million tourists visit the city. We are the second city in the world for organizing congresses and for tourism congress. Connectivity, we've managed to build a big airport with more than 30 million passengers. Export will represent 20% of Spanish export and 30% of all high technology exports. Quality of life, we've been awarded as the best city in quality of life for the last 13 years, and talent, of course, having universities at the level of the universities that New York may have. But one of the main things is entrepreneurship. What have we done in entrepreneurship since the beginning of the crisis? Barcelona Activa, the company that I manage, the city company that I manage, was created in 1986, so this is 25 years ago. That was a moment where unemployment was 21%, so nearly the same, and at that time the city council decided to invest in entrepreneurship. And the reason was very clear. I mean, if you train your unemployed to find a job for a company, you have one person unemployed. If you train that unemployed to create a company, this company will grow and you will have more jobs being created. So we decided really to bet as a city for entrepreneurship. That was 25 years ago. You can imagine at that time in Barcelona, no one was thinking about entrepreneurship, no one was thinking about venture capital, so it was quite an innovative strategy. We started as an incubator of 14 business projects, and now we've learned some lessons from that crisis. Now we have an unemployment, as I said, of 16%, and the mayor has decided that we want to be the capital of the economic entrepreneurship capital of the south of Europe and of the Mediterranean. And what he has done is to put more effort in the entrepreneurship and the business growth initiatives. So now, from that small incubator that started 25 years ago, we are coaching more than 30,000 entrepreneurs a year, and we managed to create, or to help to create, more than 3,500 jobs. And I think I was speaking to one of the mayors that are here in the delegation today. We are able to measure the impact. So I believe that every resource that as policymakers we invest is very important to measure the impact. So that idea that we have, that through entrepreneurship we would provide with more jobs, it's been made a reality in the city of Barcelona. Our claim is very clear. You can learn how to be an entrepreneur, and you can do that in Barcelona. We want all the entrepreneurs to be able to come, and we will teach them how to be entrepreneurs. To make this very practical, and Esther asked me, you have to be very practical, very, very pragmatic. Every single day of the year, not for Christmas, but every single day of the year, we have in Barcelona Activa a session, morning or evening, which is called Becoming an Entrepreneur with Barcelona Activa is Easy. And we want it to be that simple. We want it to be that simple so that the 1,000 entrepreneurs, or willing to be entrepreneurs, that come every month to Barcelona Activa, we want them to have a red carpet. So they are the important people in this economic crisis at that time. We've developed in these 25 years a model which has become a credible model. Our model, we call it the blended model. It's based on on-site services, online also assessment, because we want to reach more critical mass. And if we put all the services on site, this is not possible. So we decided to invest a lot in online also assessment, and specialize on quality spaces, so the houses of the entrepreneurs in the city of Barcelona. And I think it's very important to have a credible model as a city to support entrepreneurship. And let me tell you why. With this methodology, the city council and the local development agency has become a credible partner for the private sector, or for example for the banks. In this time of economic crisis, it's very difficult for entrepreneurs, for business to find finance to access. We've tried to develop a methodology where we say to the banks or the venture capitalists, the business angels, look, all those projects that we will send you, they have also the label of the Barcelona Activa model, so they have gone through all this process, and we've become a credible model for all these private and agents in the city. So we like to become a platform of this city. Of course, we have challenges. It's not good to come here and say that everything is okay, because it's not. We have challenges ahead of us. Let me mention two of them. One is reducing the red tape. We are very involved in doing that, so I will be very happy to hear about initiatives on how to reduce red tape for entrepreneurs. And the other one would be entrepreneurship in education. If you ask in Barcelona to kids what they want to be when they grow up, probably most of them, they say Leo Messi, and they don't want to be Steve Jobs, for example. So I think this is important. It's a thing that you've done very well here in the United States and in New York. But let me tell you that entrepreneurship is not a public policy that you can just be isolated. It has to go hand by hand with 9 other key factors, and I will mention just them very briefly. One of them is the metropolitan approach. It's very difficult, it's very different to act as a 21st century economy of innovation if you talk about 1.6 million inhabitants that the city has, or if you talk about 5 million inhabitants that metropolitan area has. So we are now doing a very important metropolitan approach in the city of Barcelona, and this means coordination about all the agents. Public-private partnership, as I said, credible model. The mayor of Barcelona just launched, after 1 month of being in the office, an initiative which is called Barcelona Growth, where we are hearing about what we should do as a city council by more than 150 agents, stakeholders, being them universities, research centers, private sector, to get really the insight of what is needed. So this public-private partnership is very needed. The third key element that has to go hand in hand with entrepreneurship policies is if we manage as city councils to have sound public finances and budgetary measures, we can implement incentives for the entrepreneurs. That was we just done 15 days ago in the city of Barcelona. So strict measures for the removal of expenses that don't give a clear value added and put this money into incentives to entrepreneurs. And the first measure that we approved was to pay our providers within 30 days, because we know that's very important for the economic recovery. The fourth element would be reactive policies. So hand by hand with entrepreneurship policies, we need to put into place employment services that are very market-oriented. So we need to listen to what the entrepreneurs and the companies need, and we need to match that with the talent and with the unemployment that we have in the city. Fifth pillar would be urban transformation has also to go hand by hand with soft economic policies. As Seth was saying before, few years ago, 50 hectares of the city of Barcelona became empty because there was a big Volkswagen Seat company that left the city because the land was too expensive. At that time, the city council decided to invest in productive economy to be put in that land, and thought about entrepreneurship and emerging sectors. Sixth element would be the quality of life. We know this is one of our assets, so we are saying to the entrepreneurs, come and do it in Barcelona, become an entrepreneur in Barcelona. We have a quality of life, so we have to also play with that. Seventh would be take care of big socio-economic events. We did that with the Olympic Games in 1992, and we want to do that again. And one of the things we just won to be the Mobile World Capital from 2012 and 2018. So we are trying to put that not only as an event that happens in the city, but as an event that dynamizes the entrepreneurship and the economic activity in the city. Eighth element would be openness and global vision, and we are saying to our entrepreneurs that they have to be born local but born global at the same time. So the market is not Barcelona, the market is the world. And the ninth and the last one would be the Barcelona brand. I think that the cities that are here today, they have a very important brand. We all take care of brand. Marketing is important. In our case, it's very important. If you go somewhere and you say, we are a company, we come from Barcelona, and they know that the city is investing in Barcelona economic promotion, this will be of help of not only the city, but also the companies that are there. So these are the 10 key points that we are promoting as a city council to foster entrepreneurship and economy innovation. And I would be glad to hear what other cities have to say on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. It's my pleasure to introduce this morning Gustavo Svarzman, who has served as Undersecretary of Economic Development for the City of Buenos Aires since 2008. He is responsible for the design and implementation of public policies that promote the creation of innovative businesses and strengthen the competitiveness of small and medium enterprises within the city. Gustavo is a professor of economic development at the University of Buenos Aires, and he holds degrees in economics from the University of Buenos Aires and from the Latin American Faculty of Social Sciences. As someone who has also crossed the academic government policy-making divide, I really appreciate the work Gustavo is doing in Buenos Aires, and I know you'll all join me in welcoming him to the Global Partners Summit today. Thank you.
Hola. Buenos días.
Hello, good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to personally thank on my behalf and on my government's behalf to global partners, to the Columbia University, to the mayor's office in New York, to Mayor Bloomberg for inviting us here, and especially because you thought Buenos Aires should be mentioned in such an important event. We are here to try and tell you a little bit about our story, as experience as a developing economy, as a Latin American country, which may be somewhat different from cities in the northern countries, such as the US or Europe. At this time of international crisis, of financial crisis, of recession and unemployment and uncertainty about the future, Argentina and Latin American countries, and specifically of the city of Buenos Aires, may be somewhat relevant. And our thought would be to share some comments about that with you. Also, I am so happy, I'm very proud to be here with you today in such an important place, such as Columbia University and New York. So I also wanted to thank you on my own behalf. I was listening to what was discussed in the first panel and to my colleagues. And that is really, I guess, what we're discussing, the fact that cities have an ever-increasing role in terms of economic management and development is only one example of what we could call quality of life, well-being, or even the level of happiness of the inhabitants. Probably 20 or 30 years or 50 or 60 years ago, we wouldn't be in a meeting where this would have been discussed. At the time, we talked about macroeconomics, direct foreign investment, foreign exchanges. 20 or 30 years ago, we might have talked about the Asian tigers and not of the Chinese phenomena, which is today much more relevant. It wasn't because these were not relevant or important, but rather because during the last 10 or 20 years, cities all over the world have become more and more important in managing many, many things and also economic development. I was just going to mention three things that were mentioned before as well. First of all, what are people's priorities? What do people want when they live in a city? What problems do they encounter? Why do they vote for the mayor at the time? That's important, and that provides political continuity, policy continuity. And because of that, we think about the things we've been thinking about here: infrastructure, education, garbage collection, pollution. How do we improve our environment? These have impact people's daily lives. Also, what are the new challenges faced by local governments in this new international scenario? How do local governments contribute? How do cities contribute? I don't only just mean the government of a city, but I talk about civil society, the third sector, or NGOs, or universities, unions, chambers of commerce, academics, professionals, and everybody, because this is not something that just pertains governments or local governments or politicians. How do cities, big cities, capital cities, how do they help generate employment? And I think that's part of the international agenda. We see this in the news all the time, and it's key today. Cities have a lot to say about this and a lot to do. How do cities contribute to innovation? How do they generate spaces and environments, places, clusters and districts, incubators, or whatever you want to call them, in which innovation is born and jobs are created, added value is created, a space in which people that live in that city or other cities, even people from other big cities, may come to these places in order to work together and develop their companies. Mayor Bloomberg was talking about this person who lives in Canada but worked in the U.S., or rather had his company in the U.S. Mayor Bloomberg was mentioning how big cities can become a magnet for people to start to have their startups. I think that's a competitive advantage in big cities, and it is our public policy function is to try and develop these. Also, and maybe this is one of the main reasons that we're here, and it's interesting, what can we learn from other cities? What can we learn from other experiences? How can we help each other? Because I'm sure that these 20 or 30 cities represented here, everyone is doing things that are maybe similar, sometimes more or sometimes less similar. I'm sure each city has an identity and a history, but I'm also sure that things that we do in big cities can be applied everywhere. We have to take advantage of human capital, human talent, the fact that we're close to the universities, they have a big market, and infrastructure, perhaps the best infrastructure or the good quality of civil society, or the third sector, so to speak, that we have in the cities. How do we then generate innovation spaces in cities that can produce companies that work in a cooperative manner? How do we generate clusters and a closer working relationship with universities and academics, so we can really take advantage of the things that our cities can offer? Because we all have our history, our identity, but we all have our own specific value of creativity, knowledge. Sometimes some cities provide in fashion, some in tourism, some in food, and others technology or innovation capacity. So let me tell you a little bit about Buenos Aires. It's for the last 4 or 5 years we've been working on things that we call the development of the culture and business culture. Buenos Aires has some competitive advantages compared to other big cities in Latin America. We have a long history of entrepreneurship, which is because of what we've inherited from our immigrant parents and grandparents, a culture to work, hard work, and creating your business. In Argentina, it's also because of all the financial problems and the ups and downs of our economy in the last 40 years. But today, we're happily better, but it's caused our business people to somehow inherit a capacity to overcome problems, to learn, and to solve all these difficulties that you may have if you have your own business. We have great capacity for these. Every year in Buenos Aires, there are 10 to 12,000 companies that start up almost spontaneously. And in fact, public policy and the local government needs to empower this process so that more people have the possibility and capacity to open up their own business, to try and also help improve the mortality rate of new startup companies that I'm sure you all know about. So we have programs to help develop new startups, innovative startups in technology, creativity, retail, and some industrial activities. Every year, we work with about 8,000 or 9,000 new entrepreneurs for these programs. We know that business people don't concentrate in the governments because you always have red tape and a change of governments. So we have these programs together with places where we find businessmen. We somewhat call it the seeds, the places where you can seed the seeds of these entrepreneurs. We hope many will survive and prosper, and some may even become big, successful companies, gazelles, so as literature would have them called. Like Anna was saying, I can tell you a little bit about our experience. We've started in the last few months a program so that every new company, every startup in Buenos Aires who have approximately $250,000 a year top, these are exempt from the local tax, which is the sales tax, which is approximately 3% of sales. This provides an incentive for a year and a half to show that the government of the city is interested in creating new startups in the formal economy. The incentive is finite. It ends 1.5 years later. And it's as a signal that the government is interested in helping out new companies, and so that others who want to have a small business from their house, a mom and pop, or these people can do this, so they can maybe consider becoming bigger and part of the formal economy. I think I don't have much time left, so thank you very much for the chance to speak to you, and I hope our experience has given you some ideas, and thank you so much for the organizing.
Thank you, Gustavo. It's now my pleasure to introduce Karine Dognin-Sauze, who is the Vice President of Innovation and New Technologies for Grand Lyon, and is on the board of Lyon Local Council and District Council. As Vice President, she's committed to promoting the digital practices of individuals and organizations and supports new strategic initiatives such as clean tech and robotics. She previously served as European Marketing Director for EA Play Label, a subdivision of one of the world's leading interactive entertainment companies, Electronic Arts, which tells you that you can cross between the public and the private sector and do good work. She holds a degree in international marketing from the University of Lyon and is a graduate of the Institute of Political Science of Lyon. Karine's work in Lyon is so innovative that we invited her here today, and I know it's important to note that for most of you, when you think of France's global city, you think of Paris. So we want to explain to everybody that we understood that, and we think that there is so much to learn from Lyon, and that Paris should be paying attention. Welcome.
Thank you, Esther. So I would like to thank Mr. Mayor of New York City, the President of New York Global Partners and their partner, on behalf of Gérard Collomb, Senator Mayor of the City of Lyon, to give us a voice in this Business Innovation Summit on a matter that is a core priority for our city strategy. I'm very happy to share with you today the example of what we've done in Lyon and the vision for our city, at least for the next couple of decades, if not for the next century. The city of Lyon is the heart of a very dynamic region. We are the second largest urban area in France, with a bit less 3 million residents, but more than 180 million potential consumers, less than 1 day drive from Lyon. We have this benefit to be strategically well located in Europe, with an easy access to regional, national, and international destination. Lyon is like demographic and economic hub at the crossroad of Northern and Southern Europe. This great connectivity and natural position means we capture a large flow of people and good transactions. We also have very massive historical industries such as transportation, chemical, textile, movie, healthcare, and a good reputation for gastronomy or fashion. And thanks to this heritage, thanks to this history, we're said to be a rich city. And some people even use the term of fat city. But the richness doesn't mean you have a great capacity for innovation. It just means that we have a scope, a great scope for innovation. And these assets are just potentials. And we start from this conclusion to drive our policy these 10 last years. To become a big player at the international scale, we have to be readable. And to reach the right level of excellence, we have to regroup the assets where we can be the most innovative and where we can make the difference. Today, international rankings place Lyon at the 9th position in Europe as being the favorite city for entrepreneurs. We have 5 competitiveness clusters. 2 of them are recognized as at an international scale, and we experience an average and stable growth rate of 5% till 2003. We also have an employment rate that is lower than the national level. And these results come from a 4-level strategy driven by the urban community, Greater Lyon, with a strong leadership to engage the key innovation stakeholders. First, we drive an active cluster policy and we build up domains of excellence. We sustain entrepreneurship with very specific tools. We activate fundamentals that reinforce the international attractiveness, such as cultural and business events, focus on the creative class, but also a strategy for the city brand building. And we leverage the urban planning to open new market potentials and give room for experimentation. The main focus that we had to put in motion these 4 core elements of our strategy has been to connect the key actors and line up their knowledge and energy under a common objective. For example, to boost entrepreneurship, we needed the commitment and the collaboration of different public authorities, consulates, the trade chamber, the university, leading company groups. In 2003, we put all these stakeholders under a very unique governance model in France that is called Greater Lyon Business Spirit, with a clear objective: create a favorable entrepreneurial environment. As main action, Greater Lyon's Business Spirit has created a network that regroups that is a unique entry point for any people that want to create and implement new business. And this network regroups the different incubators, regroup a pool of mentors, and provide a range of services. By this way, we increased by 22% the number of business creation, and we reached the highest rate in France with 20,000 new businesses a year. And we did the same when we launched in 2007 the city branding on Lyon. These achievements demonstrate how important it is to connect the right actors under the right objective. Gaps exist despite the fact innovation stakeholders need each other. And dissolving these multiple gaps that slow down innovation has been our focal point when we engage the cluster policy and the creating in 2005 of our competitiveness clusters. We focused on only 5 of them, the 5 where we could have the better potential asset to reach the massive size and the form of excellence: biotechnology, chemicals environment, transport systems, digital content, and technical textiles. The urban communities offer a financial support directly to R&D projects. It can reach up to 30% of the budget. This means we can support the emerging of very targeted new segments, and we can line up the research effort with local economic objectives that reach a global demand. For example, thanks to funding, we help the emerging of serious game industry from the video games industry. Lyon Biopol, which is a biotech clusters, has captured 400 million euro R&D budget invested in 70 projects. And today, this is the first European center of vaccines. The chemical environment clusters also invest the same amount of budget in R&D, and recently we support a very innovative and collaborative research platform to design the next generation of sustainable factory called Indeed. These clusters have deeply reshaped our economic development. It was a required first step to create the foundation of our innovation strategy. We start now the phase 2. After 6 years, these clusters have reached a form of maturity, meaning that we can change the way we interact with them. We don't need as much as we did in the past to play a direct role in their governments. Since 2 years, we've been focusing now on a new challenge, which is straighten again our positioning and get to a new level of excellence on 3 sectors only: life science, clean tech and energy efficiency, and digital content industry. The ambition behind this new approach is to actively contribute to emerging segments that serve the current challenges, such as climate changes, healthcare, and new way of life. We want to address the worldwide market with a readable offer and become the reference in each of these respective areas by producing new products, new technologies, and new solutions. And to reach this objective, we are focusing on 2 main priorities. We're redesigning the landscape by concentrating and pulling all together in the same area as a diverse actor. We give them access to the public space to experiment new business models and solutions through urban planning. And our second priority is to encourage the cross-cluster dynamic between the chemical environment clusters, the transportation clusters, to build up a global clean technology offer about energy efficiency and become an European reference in the 5 years ahead. As a conclusion, we've learned the following lessons. Public authorities at the city level can easily be these bridge builders that make the difference. This role is essential to stimulate innovation and design the new economy. We have this power to accelerate the organic development and structure it with consistency. It's also crucial to leverage and enhance the richness of our environment by looking the critical mass. It means attracting new talents or extending our scope to new cities with complementary assets. We can provoke this interaction with global projects that serve both the city building and the emerging of new economic segment. It's what we called the happy density. From my perspective, metropolitan areas are the perfect place to create new models that will shape our future at different levels. The new economy, but also the new society. Comparing to a country, the major city offers the right size to support and experiment innovation and entrepreneurship. The city of Lyon places its ambition at 2 levels. Firstly, bringing a valuable and relevant contribution to the worldwide markets. And secondly, being an innovating city that inspires innovation and entrepreneurship by providing new public services that embrace new technology, a collaborative creativity, and an accessible public space. This last point is another proper challenge and probably a great topic for another debate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite members of the audience here to come up to the 2 microphones to ask questions to our panelists. I just want to remind everybody that this is a forum for questions, so I prefer no long speeches, but please feel free to come up now and ask questions. I'm expecting all my students back there to have a question. So while people are lining up, I have a question for our panelists. Now, we've heard from everybody, both the mayor and Jeff Immelt, as well as our panelists today, that there are so many positive things that cities are doing to promote economic development and create jobs. Yet, most of us in this room have had the experience of talking to people about public policy and having them come back to us and say, the best thing government can do for business is simply to just get out of the way. Get out of the way, for those of you who don't speak English, means do nothing. So I would like the panelists, and we can start with Karine and just work our way down, to briefly address what has been the most important program that you have implemented to work with business in your cities to create jobs.
Oh, definitely the answer is this cluster policy. without our action, we will probably not have this cluster in the area that we really wanted, or that were very important for the economic development of the territory, but as well for the companies. We also make this link between the small companies and the big group, the research, the laboratory, the university. And this 5 clusters policy is in addition to another action that is about university. In Lyon, we have 7 different universities that are now regrouped in only one. And all this dynamic, this momentum, cannot happen with a vision, with a shared vision with the stakeholder, and we do really all this work at this different level.
Gustavo?
Bueno, sobre este tema.
Regarding this issue, likely in Argentina, the debate whether the state has to do something in order to spur the economic development, all that it does to do is, well, to get out of the way, that's we have put an end to this debate 10 or 15 years ago. There is an important consensus among different players in politics and management of development, because the local governments need to make an effort to spur strategic or specific projects. And the most important project that the city of Buenos Aires has as far as economic development is a project called Technological District Parque Patricio. And this has to do with the creation of a cluster of technological companies for technology. We call them the CITs, KPO and BTO, ICTs, which is basically clean technologies that can live with the neighbor, that need a skilled manpower, labor force that many cities and universities have in many places where you have innovation places. In Buenos Aires, we have 39 universities, which is a large number, and we have between 70 and 80% of technology companies. And these Distrito Tecnológico Parque Patricio project aims to convert an old industrial area of manufacturing and textile area that was going through some crisis in the 50s or in the 60s, which had stopped operating or have moved to the suburbs where the square meter or the possibility of building is very simple, prices of the land is low, and environmental policies are much more flexible. So we are trying to convert these areas in technological areas with the presence of such companies. Like I said, 100 companies operating in this area through some fiscal incentives, and we would like to move there some universities so that the small technological companies and new entrepreneurs in time also will move towards those areas.
Thank you. Anna?
Yes. I think from the local authorities, we have a lot to do in this, so I would not say do nothing. I think cities are at the forefront of the crisis. I mean, and if we are at the forefront of what our citizens need, they don't go to the national administration to ask for help. At least in our case, in Spain, they come to the city council, which is the closest administration that they have. So if we are at the forefront of the crisis, we should be also at the forefront of the responses. This does not mean that we have to do everything, of course not. I was talking before about being a credible platform or being a credible partner of the private sector, of the universities, of the research centers. What we're trying to accomplish in Barcelona is being a one-stop shop, so making life easy for our citizens and for entrepreneurs. So if you come to the city council, we understand your needs, we offer you responses. This does not mean that we have to implement those responses, but we know how to put you in contact with that business angel that wants to invest in that particular sector. We put you in contact with that university that has a research project on that. So I would say that's one of the key points that we're trying to accomplish in Barcelona. The second one would be, and I stop with the second, I mentioned also that when you think about urban transformation and infrastructure, think about economic activity. So, and this is a point where architects have to be in contact with economists, of course. So if we have a chance to transform our city urbanistically and transform the use of land, it's important to think what economic activity should be put in that land.
Well, last comment from Seth, and then we'll take the questions.
It was interesting to hear Gustavo talk about the national consensus in Argentina about the important role that government plays, because I'm not sure in the United States today that we have a consensus of that type. In fact, I think increasingly there's a hostility to government, which in some ways is understandable because a lot of the private sector's dealings with government can be frustrating, encountering red tape, having to deal with regulations, and all of that is legitimate, and so you can understand why a lot of businesses would just say, step out of the way and I can do my thing. But it's important to remember that one person's red tape is another person's important regulation, whether it's for safety or health or other reasons. Many of these rules have been put in place for a reason and serve an important role. So I would say that there are probably three broad areas where government, especially city government, can play an important part in growing the economy. The first is just acting as a convener. Although this can happen without government, frequently government is best placed to bring diverse groups of people together, introduce them to one another. One of the things that we've found in New York City, I mentioned that our technology sector has grown to over 100,000 people, but we're an economy that has 3.5 million people employed, and it's very difficult for those 100,000 people in that larger economy to find each other, and so bringing these people together, introducing them, creating networks is important. The second is creating attractive conditions that bring the best and the brightest to a city, whether that's investing in infrastructure, which the private sector doesn't really do as a matter of course, or trying to put in place attractive elements like parks and cultural institutions and others to draw the best and the brightest into the city. And then the third, and perhaps I think the most important, is that government can identify market failures, places where for whatever reason the market has left a gap that the public sector is able to fill, and therefore prime the pump and get economic activity going. I see that here, for example, with our incubator network, and others have talked about their incubator networks. We had empty space in New York City. We had entrepreneurs who needed space, but the market just wasn't marrying the two together. And so one of the things that we did at the New York City Economic Development Corporation was to say to landlords, hey, you know, there's this whole untapped market of users for your space that you have sitting empty, and then to say to the entrepreneurs, hey, there's all of this empty space that you could probably use, and bringing them together. And I think, again, this is an area where government is better placed to overcome the hurdles than the private sector might be.
That's great. Let's take a question.
Hello, my name is Laura. I'm from Argentina. My question is actually for all of the panelists. One may think that new firms of entrepreneurs are more vulnerable in time of crisis. So my question is, did any of your programs change because of the crisis? What did you have to do in order to address the problems that we had in the last 2 or 3 years?
Before I ask the panelists to answer these questions, since we don't have much time, I'd like to take all 4 questions from the people standing and then ask the panelists. We'll divide them up. So let's take the next question over here.
Hi, my name is Shamik Bose. I'm a second-year student in SIPA. My question is that I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, and I'm facing this cultural shift in the United States where everyone's looking for the next big idea, and everyone's aspiring to be the next Steve Jobs. And, you know, we live in very saturated markets, and it's hard for us to compete with barriers to entry. So I'm not going to make the next Apple. And then when I go and I travel to my countries in Asia, cities in Asia, I see that entrepreneurship happens on a daily basis at a very micro level, you know, the street vendors. And so I was wondering, how can we take some of that and bring that to the US? and wanting to see what you guys are thinking about inspiring entrepreneurship for mid-sized companies.
Great. Third question.
Hello, I'm a urban design graduate here at GSAP. What I'd like to ask is Anna's take on the idea of espai public, which is a Barcelona term for public space, and that there are 22 at district, Poblano, in the creation of public-private partnerships that create actually in public space, and how businesses that are private can also help define and create public institutions and cultural places.
Thank you. Final question.
My name is Karen Vega from the World Bank. I'm working on urban development now. My question is, given that the world is rapidly urbanizing, many of you have talked about attracting new talent to your cities, not only from inside your countries, but also abroad. So my question is, if your plans succeed, how do you plan to assess this innovation migration to your cities in a way that can also permit you to plan for the additional services that your cities will have to deliver or provide to this new population as citizens of your city? And specifically a question for Lyon. You talked about new public services that the city of Lyon is developing. So if you could elaborate a bit on that. Thank you.
Well, why don't we have each of you try and take one of these questions. If you want to touch upon a second one, that would be fine, but I think that would take us to the end of the time. So why don't we start with the first question, which was addressed to you, Gustavo.
Regarding the Buenos Aires case, I understand that the most important task for local governments is to try to strengthen already existing processes on the market, meaning government interventions, spurring development, detached from activities that have some strategic sense. I was saying that perhaps in all cities we do similar things, and we do technology, fashion, design, infrastructure, trade, cultural initiatives, audiovisuals, but hardly in some cities they promote automotive industries, fisheries, and I'm sure these activities do exist, and we try to preserve them. But there are some activities that are not feasible in large cities because of market reasons or environmental reasons, or they're not practical. I believe that the key to these issues is to try that programs have a strategic value. States have an advantage over states because they're going to go for short-term incentives and private benefits. It's important to reconcile politics with social initiatives, whether these are companies, entrepreneurs, universities, academics, trade unions, and basically with the political opposition, since the cycle of life of a government is only 4, 5, 6 years, and usually the life cycle of businesses is much longer than that. Therefore, we would be doing something wrong if we're thinking in terms of a project that ends once the government changes. In the case of Buenos Aires, all programs that have to do with economic development, and economic development, as you all know, by definition, is a middle to long run objective. Nobody thinks of economic development for next year. We always think in terms of from now to 5, 15, or 20 years. And all these the economic development projects have been approved through laws and initiatives that have been blocked by the opposition. And so we need to support these policies in case of a change of government, which inevitably
I think that's a sufficient response because we've got to get through 4. Thank you. Seth, why don't you take the micro-level entrepreneurship question?
Sure. I think when a lot of people talk about entrepreneurship, they're focused exclusively on the technology sector, on businesses. Everyone dreams of starting the next Google or Apple in their city. And that certainly is part of our dream for the future of New York, but not the entirety of it. New York has always been a city of small businesses. I'm going to get these statistics slightly wrong, but I think that something like 70% of the businesses in New York City employ fewer than 5 people, and 98% of the businesses in New York City employ fewer than 100 people. And so small business has always been a very important driver of business activity and employment in New York. That's why when we think about entrepreneurship, we don't pick industries. We very intentionally allow our entrepreneurs to choose for themselves what they think are the industries, A, that they're most properly positioned to thrive in, and B, that they think have the greatest potential for growth. And so although when people think about our network of incubators, they might think about our technology incubators, which are part of our network, we also have incubators that are geared towards manufacturers. We have incubators that are geared towards arts groups. Similarly, our training programs are in a whole host of different industries. So we understand that not every business that's founded in New York is going to be at the cutting edge, and not every business is going to end up employing tens of thousands of people. Those businesses that are higher growth are certainly important to the future of the economy, but so in collective are the smaller businesses as well, and that's why we're really focused on both ends of the spectrum.
Thank you. Karine?
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to answer in French. Donc, sur cette question qui concerne les nouveaux services publics et comment une ville peut aider à mettre en place des relais de croissance au travers de ces éléments-là, nous avons plusieurs exemples. À Lyon, nous avons, par exemple, réfléchi à une centrale de mobilité.
We thought about a central mobility central, allowing, from the point of view of a user, to determine his trip from point A to B, and using all the available transportation service, and it reduces traffic considerably and reduce the use of car, but we're also developing free bicycles or electric cars that can be borrowed. We're also stimulating sharing cars. We have new districts to do this. In the middle, they are being renovated. For instance, the second business district, calling the Pardieu, which has the train station and a business center, and all these elements are not very well connected, so we have decided to create it as a reservation, a living lab that appeals to open innovation, and also so that the services are elaborated by the citizens themselves in partnership with companies and public sector. And we have also the partnership with private sector, and we give access to these spaces to try new solutions. As for the crisis, I would like to say that the crisis is also new challenges, which are for us public and economic actors, an opportunity to create new ways of growing, and the climate plans are a good example.
Well, I think I had a question over there about the 22 At Innovation District in the city of Barcelona. Well, that's an example of what I was saying before between urban transformation and economic transformation. 10 years ago, there were 800,000 square meters in the city of Barcelona, very close to the sea. And it was a place that was quite empty. It used to be called the Catalan Manchester because there were a lot of heavy industry there, lots of textile. I don't know if there's someone from Manchester here, but there was a heavy industry. So that industry left the city because, of course, the price of the land was high, and Barcelona is a very dense city, so they left outside of the city. And the city council had a dilemma here: what should we do with these 800,000 square meters? What the city council decided to do is to invest, to provide with the conditions for this area to be competitive for the private sector. Nowadays, in this area, there are 5 clusters. Clusters means combination between big companies, entrepreneurs, universities, and the public sector. So in media, ICT, clean energies, biotech, and design. It hosts now 7,000 businesses, 50 of them of new creations, so new entrepreneurs. 4,500 freelancers, so self-employed, and more than 90,000 employees. So that's a little bit of an idea of how urban transformation can be combined with what we want for the city, which is more business activity and more employment at the end of the day.
Thank you so much to all our panelists and to our questioners. This was an extremely innovative and optimistic set of presentations, I think, which challenges us all. And we really are grateful for the opportunity that you've presented today, for sharing your best practices with us. This is a generous group. People like to think cities just compete. At Columbia University and with global partners, they actually share their innovations. So we thank you for this presentation today.